In the previous lesson, we showed you how you can make a connection to an external file, pulling that information back into JavaScript. So this returned data is actually not quite right, so that response text. So we don't actually have the ability to use it as an object until we parse through it. And parsing is going to be really easy because we do have the ability to parse that data with a built-in JavaScript method. So I'm going to set up a variable. I'm going to call it jContent. And of course, you can call this whatever makes sense for you within your coding structure. And the method is going to be JSON parse. And here we have to enter in a JSON string. And the string is, of course, that response text that we want to pull through. And what this is going to do, now when I console log this jContent, we're going to see that that JavaScript is actually going to be as an object, returned back as an object, and a usable format. So we can see that this object, there's 4 objects contained within it, and each one of these objects has some data within it. So this is the exact structure that we want to be returning back from PHP and from the MySQL database. So we're going to have a list of users with first name, last name, and their ages, except we're going to be able to dynamically update the database and then pull that data back in a usable format within JavaScript. So we're going to be showing you how to do that in the upcoming lessons, but this was just to illustrate that now we can actually use this data. So what if we want to list out this returned data? So this is going to be really easy to do, again, within JavaScript. So what I want to do is set up a brand new variable. I'm going to call it myObject, and I'm going to look for it to loop through all of those objects within jContent. And I'm going to console log this out, or maybe I can start using that output section. So output.inner HTML. So instead of having my inner HTML being set there, so maybe I can have something like inner HTML and add through all of that returned JSON content. And the way to access that is the same way we would access any object within JavaScript. So I would do jContent, and here I would select that object information. So what this is doing is this is selecting that user1 as an object instead of actually having to list it out. And as it loops through all those different object values, we're going to get a whole list of those, and then we can look through that object and return back that additional data that's sitting there within that object. So I want to return back first name, and this is going to be within that same format as we have our JSON content, because that's the way the object is structured. And also going to include the last name. So we're going to do a whole listing of first name and last names. So what I need to do is just update this to match with what I have down over here, and maybe I even should include the age as well. So this is turning out to be pretty long. So age, and then lastly, I should also include a line break. And we might actually place these as divs, so maybe that makes more sense. And then we could format it with some styling. So this will be the closing div. And a quick look at that, and hopefully that should translate properly within the JavaScript. And I'm actually going to update this theme here because I'm finding that some of this text is a little bit hard to read. So I'm going to flip through to a different theme so that the code is more readable. So also I can make it a little bit bigger as well. So this is that string that's going to output, loop through the content that's being returned back from JSON that gets parsed out. So it gets parsed out as an object within JavaScript. We set a variable that's going to contain that object called JContent, and then we loop through all of the available objects within JContent. We return back a variable with that main object name there, and we loop through it and we continuously output it. So we increment that inner HTML. So maybe what we should do as well is just keep that at blank. So now when we loop through it, we get that information that's being returned back from the JSON file in a nice readable format within our HTML. And one of the things that maybe we can also add in, which we're going to show you in the next lesson, is when the data is loading, maybe we could just have a message here. A lot of times you'll see those spinners. So when the data is loading, because when you are using an AJAX call, you do have to wait for the data to load in before you can display it out. And that's what we see over here when we're waiting for that ready state change. So in some cases, it's not actually happening now because this file is local and I've got a quick response back via AJAX. But we do want to make sure that we show the user something and that something is happening within the ready state. So I could set a default message in that inner HTML until I update it. So we could do something like that as well. So as soon as this request is sent, then we make a change within the inner HTML. So I could add in something like this, like loading or something like that. And then, of course, we can put this into a function. So there's a bunch of different options now, but at least this way, if the user's coming in, they're going to see the loading, and then once it completes loading, and I need to remove that loading as well. So once the state changes, then we're going to update that message.